Salesforce automation is the core functionality of a CRM system, and it's not workflow rules. I heard some people asking if this was a workflow rule presentation. Those are actually tomorrow. That is another piece of automation. This is just the process of taking a lead and closing a deal. So these are some questions you need to answer when you're planning your sales process. You can make a much more complex process than what I've written up here, but I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. Where do I get my leads? How do I know they're good leads? And how do I sell my product to these leads? Leads can come from all different places, and then you have your own way to qualify them, but how do you enter that into the CRM? And where do you enter it? And lastly, how do I track my sale? Right, and that converts into these three main topics of conversation today: generate, qualify, and sell. There's lots of different pieces in each section here, but in the most simplest sense, this is what the CRM is going to help you do, is manage those leads, qualify them, and then track your sales. So I'm going to lead you through different tasks in each of those categories. But before we begin, let's define Salesforce automation. So sales is the strategy to exchange goods. That's something that we all know. We have our own definition for sales. So quickly move past that. Why do we sell, though? So three main reasons we sell: to drive revenue, to make some money, company growth, which is not necessarily just to grow your profits, but to grow your business, more product lines, different product categories, selling through different industries, adding additional territories or offices or branches to your company, and then to gain market share for your product. So that is why we sell to customers. Automation is a software model of a real-life process. So going way back in the day before software, we were still selling to customers. We just didn't have a CRM to enter all this data. Maybe even before, we didn't have a spreadsheet to track all those sales. But people were still selling and making money and growing a business. So that was a real-life process. We had our own system of meeting people, remembering their information, asking them questions, and getting that product into their hands. So software was designed to take a real-life process like sales or marketing and make it easier for us to track. So having the human beings do less work and having, not to remember just as much stuff as you need to all the time, or not having to write it all down. So that's what automation is doing. It's taking the mistakes that we make when we're trying to write something down in a rush, so reducing human error. It's going to help us with efficiency, so we have the same amount of people, the same resources, but able to do more work with those resources. And then increase production, so the more we add into the CRM and as we add more workflows and things like that, we're able to do a lot more in less time. So these are things that automation helps with. And now what we've seen in the market is not only we have CRM sales automation, we have marketing automation. We're going to talk about support automation in the other track with Zoho Support. And so every different department of your company has a different app to help with these three categories. So now we combine it together, and Salesforce automation is the strategy of using software tools to streamline your sales process with the intention to drive revenue and capture all your customer interactions. And the key word to remember on here is that it's always repeatable. Now with software, it's much easier to have this repeated because you can document exactly how the next salesperson is going to use the software, and you can add additional workflow rules to make these actions easier. But everything has to be repeatable. If that salesperson is not there that day, or you hire 2-3 more people, this entire process has to be able to be easily taught and maintained. In Zoho CRM, this converts into lead management, accounts management, which includes the contact section, tracking sales pipeline, which is the potentials section, and monitoring daily activities, which is your tasks, events, calls, and even your notes and your email interactions. So that's where it fits into the CRM. I know potentials is confusing word to use to track a sale, and more of you are more accustomed to seeing words like opportunities or deals. So they're all interchangeable, and we are working to update some of those internal phrases on the CRM, so you won't see potentials anymore soon enough. So Salesforce automation, one piece of what CRM can do. So when CRM was originally created, it became this crazy monster of adding marketing automation and support automation and then on and on and on. And now things are changing as companies are growing. They're making separate apps for marketing, separate apps for CRM, separate apps for support. And as you can see that in our own company as well. But some of those things still remain in the CRM on a simpler scale. So yes, you can do mass emails in the CRM, but it doesn't have the full analytics portion. Yes, you can track cases in the CRM, but it's not a full support automation tool. So CRM, the core functionality will remain as Salesforce automation, but you will see modules for the rest of this, for the rest of these processes still in there. Eventually, though, as you grow, there are more robust applications that we offer to fill in all of these pieces. You can make a quote in Zoho CRM, but you can then eventually use Zoho Books or Zoho Invoice to make better quotes and add automation and add customization to that in a much further aspect. So that's the functionality of our CRM software. All right, so back to our 3 circles here: generate, qualify, and sell. So generate, that begins that throws us into the leads module. So let's talk about lead management. So what is a lead? If you read our user guide, it gives you this really complex definition. To simplify that, just an unqualified prospect. So someone you have some information about, but it's not fully completed. So you can, if you obtain a business card from someone here, they may have their name, email, and phone on there, but you don't know any other information about them. And so you have to call them or email them to collect more data. So Samir had this example of, I think, Maverick Clothing, which is the company that we're going with. By the way, we're both from Dallas, so that's where that name came from. So Maverick Clothing, and we were selling uniforms to different businesses. So that's the example I'm going to continue with. Leads are generated by marketing. Who here generates their own leads as a salesperson? And then these leads are converted into contacts. There's more to that, but that's the first phrase we want to capture, is that a person who is a lead becomes a person who is a contact. Generate. So what does it take to build my business? Your website, social media, email campaigns, advertising, which is both digital and print, events, and referrals. So that's where we get our leads from, and then we put that into the CRM in different ways. So if you meet someone, you can manually enter their information by adding a new lead. If you have people coming to your website, then you should create a web form or a series of different web forms for different landing pages. If you are using Facebook and Twitter, you can use our social tab to directly see a tweet or a Facebook post and add it as a lead. You can start off with your email campaigns in the CRM if you're not ready to go forward with like a Zoho campaigns or an email marketing tool. You can still select a list of people and send emails to them. If you go to an event, you can import the list. Most events that we go to, they usually send us a spreadsheet after, and it's pretty easy to import into the CRM. And then there's the campaigns module, which can be used to track like an advertising campaign. You can put a budget, you can put the start and end date of that advertising campaign, and there's a pre-built report that will run the budget that you put on the campaign against how much revenue you got from those closed potentials. So there's all those different ways that you can track lead generation in the CRM. And so the first thing we're going to do is create a lead. This is probably the first thing you did when you registered for the CRM, but this is the lead that we're going to work with. So if you want to follow along with me, now I'll introduce who this person is. This is Jasmine Frank. She is she owns an amazing basketball team called the Pleasanton Porcupines, and she can be reached at this number. Looks fake, but it's a real number. And she can be reached at that email. And her address just happens to be exactly where you're sitting right now. All right, so we were talking about Maverick Clothing. So Pleasanton Porcupines is going to eventually purchase some uniforms from Maverick Clothing. Yes. All right. So let's go into the CRM. Hopefully you captured her information. If not, you can make the rest up. Jasmine Frank, Pleasanton Porcupines. So in the CRM, click on the leads module. Let me go ahead and zoom in. And anytime you want to add a new record, you can do so from the top right. And that applies to any of these modules, just on the top right. I went ahead and already added her in. I cheated. So she's already in the system. So you fill in the fields as you collect information, but all we're simply going to do is add the company, email, phone number, not too much information. If you were In Samir's presentation, you added a lot of mandatory fields. Well, now you have to fill them all out because it's not going to let you save it. All right, next step. So we've generated our lead. Let's say we met her somewhere at a trade show or an event. Maybe it was called Zoholics. Maybe I went last year. Maybe I met her. Maybe I run a clothing company on the side. I don't know. But she entered her into the CRM. All right, we've got our lead source, which let's say we added a business card and put the information in. Then we can nurture her. And that the aspect of lead nurturing, which can get really complex, there's terms like lead scoring and things like that. We're not going to dive into that. Just know that when a lead is entered into system, you should give that person like a 1 rating, and you want to get them to a 10 rating or a hot lead before you convert them over. And there's lots of complex ways that you can track that in between, but that's our goal. And you do that by nurturing the lead. So usually nurturing involves giving people more information or educating them about your product or your service. So how do you do that? You can make landing pages. If you ever clicked on any of these Zoho ads all around, thank you, it costs us money. But if you have, you will be taken to a really nice landing page, gives you some information. It's completely separate from our website, but we'll know that you went from that ad to that landing page and entered into our CRM. And that gives us an idea of the success rate for that online ad. Landing pages you can use on brochures and flyers as well, so that people go to another website so you know exactly where they're coming from, rather than just signing up on that same web form. Writing blogs, you have drip campaigns, brochures, decision guides. Free samples, we offer a free trial, we offer the demos, and then also sitting on the webinars. So how do you do that in the CRM? So this is all the stuff that you use to nurture the lead, but how do you track in the CRM? Well, when you send a follow-up email, you can attach a flyer, a brochure, you can attach a pamphlet or a PDF file to that email to put the nurturing aspect in place. So when you learn how to send an automated email to a customer, you can also send an attachment with that email, so it provides extra information. There's an autoresponders section in the Enterprise Edition of CRM, which is directly related to Zoho campaigns. You can use that to set up drip campaigns. A drip campaign will allow you to send emails to your leads based on like a date field or a certain set of static dates. So like on the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, or you can do it like the 1st of every month and send a newsletter. All right, so in a very simple way, let's do some lead nurturing with our lead. So let's just send an email by clicking here, and you can send whatever email you want, and it will send through the system. Okay, so it's because we have our own mail servers. So technically you can still send an email, but when you integrate your email hosting service with our email servers, then you'll also see the received emails back. So what we're going to send is some helpful information. So if you are wanting to do that, type a nice email and watch it get bounced right back to you because it's a fake email address. All right, so that's nurturing. So in my sales team, that's something that we always try to add to our first follow-up email. Sure, you can summarize the call and send that over, but add one of our marketing content PDFs. People like to see physical things, or send a quote even though it didn't ask. They told you how many licenses they wanted, send the quote. It's something physical and something that provides more information than just an email. So it's a good strategy, and again, you can build up on this a lot more using other apps, but this is a quick way to start a lead nurturing process and put it in place. All right, next step is to qualify the lead. So now knowing, is this the right person to follow up with? That is the biggest challenge. You can calculate things like conversion rates and all that from qualifying your leads. So at some point you will figure out a good number of how many leads should be qualified, and you can train your sales team even further. And then you can use tools like Zoho Motivator back there to actually see the constant conversion rate of leads and make sure that the reps are still following 20% conversion, or if they're falling behind, if they need more leads, and the data can be pulled from that app. All right, so how do we qualify? We ask questions and gather requirements. You have to come up with the questions. Unfortunately, CRM can't magically tell you what questions to ask, but you have to figure out what those questions are. We have our lead development reps. You may have gotten a call from one of them. They ask the same 5 questions on every call, asking about what apps you currently have, what your timeline is for implementation, etc. And where do they put all that? They fill in fields. So we have a field for, are they new to CRM? Do they have previous experience, or are they switching from one CRM to another? That's a field that we have. It's a drop-down menu. So that's where that information can go. Adding it under notes might be really, really hard to track, even though it's a good practice. Try to add those into custom fields and then even make them mandatory, and drop-downs and checkboxes work a lot better than text. If you gather requirements, when you were a CRM lead at some point, you sent us maybe some requirements for our pre-sales team. We add those requirements as an attachment into the lead section. So that's another spot you can add additional information. Download the requirements and then add them as an attachment. So some places, which I just mentioned, so you can fill in fields. We have lead status already in there. Add your own custom fields. And then lastly, add your notes. The more custom fields, the shorter your notes. And the notes can just have extra information that, the customer is super friendly on the phone and I loved them, and whatever you want to write in there. That's the kind of information we write in our notes, by the way, so that when someone else follows up, they're like, oh, this person sounds really cool and they live here and they went to vacation here. All of that is the report. That's going in the notes, and the custom fields are keeping track of the real information. It's much easier for me to run a report that way than on notes and having to read all of that through. All right, so notes, fields, let's go ahead and summarize our call. So let's pretend that we called Jasmine Frank, and she decided that she was interested in uniforms for her basketball team, and I wanted the reps to summarize that information. So summarize the call in the notes, and then add any additional information. So when can I follow up, and how many times do I follow up? So we're going to continue qualifying our lead. So far, we figured out what questions to ask her and what requirements we would need in order to know that she is a good lead for Maverick Clothing. What would we ask her? We'd ask her, how many people are on your team? Maybe do you have a sketch of what your logo looks like? What sport do you play? That's all that information can be added into the CRM. Now, let's say she's like, okay, I'll talk to you later and I'll call back. What do you do after that? So you have to figure out when to follow up. So a bad sales rep would say, okay, I'll call you when I call you, bye. And then add a task. A good sales rep will say, are you free on Tuesday in the afternoon? How about 3 o'clock? And then they'll add that as a task or an event. So when can I follow up? And then how many times? So if you sign up for Zoho CRM, we have our reps call 4 times, and then they give up. And then we wait for the customer to respond, hopefully. But I think that's enough calling. When do we follow up? We call on day 1 of the trial, day 3 of the trial, day 7 of the trial, day 14 of the trial. So figuring out that process and whatever works for you and what doesn't make all your customers really, really angry because you keep calling and emailing them, you figure out your sweet spot. And that will also build into the qualification. So where do you log all this data in the CRM? So going with the same model, what we ask, and then where do we enter it in? Well, we're going to do follow-up emails. We can add conference calls to our calendar. We can meet this person in person, and we put that into task calls and activities and events, etc. You can also use notes. You can also use the email section, but mainly in the CRM, the activity is tasks, events, and calls. So what are tasks? What are events? What are calls? When do I use one? Do I use both? It's kind of confusing because you have to unfortunately answer that yourself, and I'm just going to define the 3 for you, and you figure out what works best for your team, and I'll give you some examples. So task, your to-do list, it has a due date and a status. That status can be customized in the CRM. It's open, deferred, in progress, and closed or completed. An event will go on the CRM calendar, which will then sync to Outlook or Google or your iPhone, and we'll talk about that later on, or in a one-on-one, but there's ways to do that. And then it has a start and end time, so that's the field difference. You won't see a due date, you have to put a start and end time. And the unique aspect is that you can send invites. You can send invites to your contacts and leads, but you can send invites to your users as well. And the calls have a call type, then you can log the duration and the time. That one is not as commonly used, but it can be automated. We have a session on day 3 that shows you how to integrate the calls section with Zoho Phone Bridge, which will then communicate with things like Ring Central and log the duration and time of your call automatically, and you just need to fill in the description. In the mobile app, the call section is in fact very useful because if you call through the mobile app, automatically the log a call function will take the duration and time of the call and save it, and all you have to do is add the rest of the information. It will actually pop up on your phone screen. That's when I see people use the call section more. Task and event is really more commonly used. We use tasks for callbacks and sending information and things like that. We use events for scheduling demos and pre-sales calls. That's how we're differentiating it. So figure out if you want everything on your calendar, then you really have to use the events because tasks don't go on the calendar. Another thing to remember is that the events, because they have a start and end time, that you're busy at that time. So if you want to communicate that information, then make it an event and not a task. The tasks will also sync with Google and Outlook and along with the calendar as well. All right, so those are the differences between the three. Now let's go ahead and add a task and an event into our lead. And this is the task and event that we can add. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. We'll create a task called send an email, and we'll do that today. And then we'll add an event called conference call, and we'll schedule it for June 8th from 9 to 10. All right, so here we are in the lead. You can add the task and event from the top right. You don't have to do so. You can go the more complicated route and scroll all the way down and add it from here. All right, either way, it's going to do the exact same thing. So we can enter in information, choose a due date, and then if you are not on a trial, you can add a reminder through pop-up or email. The pop-up reminder will only work if you're logged in, so keep note of that. And then the more fields section will allow you to change the status. So this is the most important aspect of a task is the status, because you can then know how many tasks were completed per day or per week. You can see which tasks are overdue or in progress, and you can use the reporting section or custom views to sort that information out. If you assign the task to another user, you can send them a notification email. You can send it to yourself if you forget everything and fill up your inbox with useless information, and then you can hit done. All right, so there's an account over here as well. Notice that it's grayed out. This will only work when you're creating a task from a contact or an account, and then this will say contact. So it does let you flip around here, but let's just stick with adding as a lead. All right, so once you have your task, different ways to view the task. You can see it here on the right-hand side. So that's where all this space will be filled in once you have tasks. You can just roll your mouse over it. You can see the status and if it started yet. You can move over to the Activities tab. You can change the view to My Tasks, All Tasks, and you can see it from there too. You'll be able to quickly close the task from here. You can go to the lead as well. And if you don't have any other information to add about this particular task, you can simply just hit the close button right next to it. So those are some ways that you'll see the task as well. So this section will soon have information about like actionable items such as your tasks and your open pipeline and things like that. So adding an event which goes on the calendar, you'll see that there's a from and a to. So let's put conference call. So we'll do a conference call right in the middle of the middle of Zoholics here, so we'll have to step out of the room and complete it. And I can change the time, so let's do 9 to 10. It defaults by an hour. You can change the default settings in the calendar as well if you want it to default to 30 minutes, etc. And this is the unique feature here, and that's to add participants. So you can add contacts. You can go to a view of contacts. You can add your other users. If it's someone that's not in your CRM account, then you can manually type in the email address as well. So then they'll get an event invite. There's more details here. There's the reminder, and you can add custom fields into this section as well if you want to further add more information to the event. Let's go ahead and just save this. So it shows here that instead of a status and a due date, you now have a from and a to, and the calendar is up here on the top right. So when you click on the calendar icon, you can go from day to week to month views, and we'll see our day today on the 7th is highlighted, and we can see our conference call. I can flip it over to a week view, and here it is, and I can drag and move the event to the next time. Right, and can do the same if it was today. So let's flip over to tomorrow, and we can see our conference call. It's zoomed in a little bit more, and again, I can change the time. So there's some ways to interact with the calendar, and in later sessions, we'll talk about integrating this calendar with Outlook or Google as well. Now that I'm away from the lead that I was working on, if you want to get back, you can use this Recent Items tab, and it takes you right back to where you're working. All right, so that is the event section. Let's go ahead and move on to sell. Let's take a step back and review. So we met Jasmine Frank. Me and Samir had this company, Maverick Clothing. We had her information. She gave us her business card. We added her information as a lead. We then called her. We filled in the fields. We added some notes. We scheduled a conference call. And let's dive into the future and pretend that already happened, which was tomorrow. And we collected information about what kind of sports team she has, how many players are on the team, what sizes, uniforms, and things like that. So this customer is becoming very serious about moving forward, and so now we're going to know that there's a sales opportunity. Knowing at what step that you need to move this to the next stage is the challenge. Do we move her over into a contact when we know the type of team she has and how many players she has? Or do we wait till we know the sizes and get a logo or a rough design, because she could be looking at other competitors? So we need to figure out what the buying signals are. And that's the Maverick Clothing example. So identifying those buying signals, there could be multiple ones, is how you're going to know when it's time to convert the lead. And that is the point when you hit the convert button. So let's assume that we have enough information and convert your lead. So scroll all the way to the top. So let's use our recent items to get back. So it's over here at the top, the convert button. When you hit the convert button, it's going to create an account and a contact. And that's the next part we're going to go over. So just simply hit the convert button and just get to this screen. And we'll stop right there. And let's define contact and account. So here is the conversion process. Right? This is a visual of exactly what's happening in the CRM. So when a lead converts, the information is actually split into accounts and contacts. So for example, lead source, email, phone number, that ends up under the contact because it's personal information, and industry and company name, those will end up under the account. When you create a custom field, you will be given the option of where that information transfers. And it's very important for you to make sure you transfer the information, otherwise it's lost. The potential or the deal or the opportunity is then created optionally at the same time. So you have to check that box, and it will also create your sales deal. So if you're in a sales organization that the conversion process means you're going to start tracking a deal, then you can go ahead and do so. But we're giving you the option, if you want to add an extra step and then go through different contact types and statuses, and then add the potential, you can go through that route as well. That's why it's an optional button. All right, so let's go back to our example. So we talked to her, we qualified and gathered information, and we'll convert her over. So the company information, our Pleasanton Porcupines information, maybe we have the company's address and where it is, the number of employees, their website, all that goes under account. And now she's a little happier because we built some rapport, we know her, we're buddies, we met, we had dinner, and then she becomes a contact. So that's the way to look at it, that you kind of know the person now, you have some rapport with them, and those two are connected in a hierarchy. So all your accounts are tied to contacts. The next step is to add the potential. So the potential is where you're going to make your money, a source of potential revenue, and that's the opportunity you have to make the sale and win your deal, right? So that is a really fun way to describe this boring chart. All right, so now hopefully you understand how the conversion process takes place. All right, so let's go into contacts and accounts. The account is the company or organization that the contact belongs to or works for. The contact is the person that works or belongs to that account. So if you are in B2B, this makes sense. If you're in B2C, this makes absolutely no sense because you don't have a company to attach to the contact. So what do you do in that case? Well, you would remove the accounts module completely from the CRM on an administrator level, and now leads will become contacts. You can then change the mandatory company field to optional, and now you've bypassed the account section altogether. So it does work for B2C and B2B, but it's set up as B2B. All right, so let's move forward into the potential. So you can add multiple contacts to the same account if you're talking to multiple people in terms of selling this product. So I'm going to go ahead and convert over and stay on the same screen so that where we were at. All right, so let's say Mike comes into the conversation. Mike might be the lead designer for the logo. And so we also need to call Mike because, I don't know, we didn't really like the logo or the colors don't match something that we have in stock, etc. So you can add another contact to the same account, and then you can assign them contact roles. So the idea is there's a hierarchy here. You can have an account with multiple contacts. You can go more complex. You can have a parent account to a child account, which we call member accounts, and then context tied to that as well, depending on how you're selling. So that's the relationship between those two sections. All right, so let's jump into the selling portion. So what is the sales opportunity? In the Maverick clothing sense, the sales opportunity is the uniforms that we are selling. And that is the definition of the potentials section. It is the sales opportunity. If you want to make things easier on yourself and use different terminology, feel free to rename that section as we named it to deals. And in this section, you're going to have to answer these three questions before you can actually save the record. How much money can I make? When will it close? And where is it in the pipeline? And that's going to go into the amount, closing date, and stage. So we're all here on this screen. Let's go ahead and add the amount. Let's say the uniforms are $5,000. The deal name, it defaults to the account name, and I can edit it or add more information. We can add a closing date, and this is where it goes into our sales pipeline. So I'm going to stop right there, and let's just click Add Potential and put in the amount, closing date, and then choose a stage. Where in the pipeline? That is your sales stage. So if someone asks you what's in your sales pipeline, you would look at what are the open potentials in the CRM. We've all seen this picture. This is a sales pipeline. So those potential stages are going to look like a sales funnel when running a report. And as you get closer to the bottom, the percentages will go up. So we already talked about how you can customize this. These are the default stages in Zoho CRM: qualification, needs analysis, value proposition, ID decision makers, proposal, negotiation, closed won or closed lost. I bet you $1 million in this room that no one follows this process exactly as it is. So if you are using this in your CRM, you're probably wrong, right? And if we actually did this, and I don't have $1 million to give anyway, but congratulations, we've made your sales pipeline for you. Please don't use this. This is just there as a template. It's a filler, more so. You can use some of them, but there's no company that follows the same process whatsoever. This might be too many stages for your company. You just want 2 or 3. Typically, people will have up to 5 stages, but you might want to start off smaller than that and fine-tune it later. Why do you need all these stages and these probabilities? It's really going to help you do forecasting and calculating trends and things like that once your sales organization gets more mature. If you're not at that place yet, then choose maybe 3 or 4 pieces of it and just assign a probability. That's a hard number to figure out. The challenge lies in your sales leadership to figure out the probability to close. And as you mature through months and months of selling, you'll get a better idea of what each stage actually means in terms of probability, and you can get more advanced reporting from this information. But if you're brand new to this process, just assign what you think is the best measure of each stage. And then where in the pipeline, it's going to continue to save that in the stage history. And the stage history is a related list. A related list is anything under the notes section. Your activities, your attachments, your email history are all related lists. In the potentials module, there's one more pre-created called stage history. It keeps track of the duration for each stage. It'll give you a number, and that number is the number of days. And then it's calculating expected revenue. And expected revenue is your amount field, which is your revenue, times the probability you assign to the stage, which if by just looking at it, that might not make much sense, but it's really what it's doing. It's weighting the chance for this deal to close by giving it a percent. And you will know that information once you figure out statistics of how many leads do you get and how many of those deals convert and close. Then you can start assigning better probabilities to these stages and get a better estimate of actual revenue. It will never be the same, but over time, it can give you a really good estimate of what's actually going to close. And we're not going to dive into all that, sales 101, et cetera, right now. Let's just go ahead and assign the first stage and hit convert. Then we'll see there's 3 records. I'm going to move into the account. On the right-hand side, I can see the deals in the pipeline. I can see the related contact. If I scroll down, I can see that information here and any history. So both of those activities that we made are also still saved here. And I can go into our contact. This pretty much looks like the lead page. And again, their history is still there, the activities. And then I can move forward into the deal. Now, just for demo purposes, I'm going to change the stage a couple of times. All right, so we just changed it once. And now we're going to close and win the deal. So I can just simply edit the stage and move into closed one. That was a really super easy sales process. In between each of these stages, there's going to be some action your sales team needs to do. And you have to define what those actions are. And as you become more advanced, you can automate some of those actions or automate the tasks that need to happen so you can keep track of if sales reps are completing those different items. So let's look at stage history. Now here you can see that everything stayed in each stage for 0 days. And you can also see expected revenue being calculated by multiplying the amount and the probability. So those are some things that it's already keeping track of. This information also used in reporting. You have stage history reports, you have probability reports, and then you have sales duration reports. And sales duration reports are pre-built. So you can actually see an average of how long something took from open to close. So other information that you can add onto this page. You can add competitors as well. This section is there, you may or may not use it, but in the value proposition, instead of adding this in the notes and then searching for what other products they're looking at, this is another place to add that information. And you can add what they like about that other product and maybe do some research and figure out how you can win a deal against it. The other thing in this section is the contact roles. So every single contact that is tied to the potential, and previously Mike may have come into the conversation, I could give them each a different contact role and keep track of what each person is, how they're involved in this particular discussion. These are the default roles. You can customize these in the same customization section as well and add different roles into this page. So this page actually does quite a lot. It tells you what's in your pipeline, where it is, the history of the pipeline. It tells you the summary of how long the duration is. It tells you the competitors, and it tells you everyone's role in the sales process. And then we very much encourage you to use this section and get with us in one-on-ones on how this section can be properly customized for your particular business. And that is the potential section. All right, brings us right back to our chart. So we'll do a quick review. Leads are unqualified prospects. They convert to contacts and accounts. Accounts are the organization or businesses that your contacts are a part of. Contacts are the individuals you're working with. The potential is the sales opportunity. The stages are the steps of your sales cycle. And a closed potential is a closed sale.